Awesome. We are rolling. Welcome to another episode of the Rich Sony podcast. Today we have Ray Salerno. How you doing, Ray?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's been a long day for me, but
Yeah.
I'm not like a tiring day. It's actually, I should say it's been a short day. Like it's one of
Yeah.
those.
I was in bed most of the day with a migraine. I get chronic migraines, so
Oof.
I'm really glad I'm feeling much better now.
Have you always gotten those?
They started in college, and I say that like that was so long ago. I'm 23.
Okay.
They started like freshman or sophomore year of college. They were like a stress thing, and then now I get them a couple times a month. It used to be like a few times a week, but it's gotten better.
Oof. I've never had. My mom gets migraines. I've never gotten them. I'll get a headache here and there if I don't like drink enough water. But I haven't been plagued by that. But I empathize because nothing really like puts me in the bed. But
Yeah,
that's
I would say
tough.
like the best way I can handle them is to sleep them off. So that's like mostly what I do. But they keep me in bed for a while, which is just really annoying because like I like being out and about. So
Yeah. Well, we're here. Thanks for taking the time, and I hope you're feeling okay enough to do this.
oh yeah,
I'm
I'm
sure you
good.
would have
I'm good.
told me
Thank you
if
for
if if
Oh
if we
yeah, no, I
couldn't.
would have. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Um, yeah, thanks for coming on. And we were just saying before, I'm happy you reached out. You've been on my list of people actually to have come on. This year I'm trying
Oh
to,
yeah.
yeah, this year I'm trying to get through all of the people on, and I'm like saying this now. I hope I can hold myself to it. All the people on Harrison's compilation. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, and both him and Ziggy had mentioned you on the episode that I did with them, and I was like, oh man, I should hit up Ray. And then around the same time,
Yeah.
you hit me up, and I was happy about that.
Yeah, Harrison and Ziggy actually were like, "Hey, just so you know, we were talking about you on Rich Sony's podcast. You should like reach out to him and like be on the podcast because he interviews
Yes.
people in our circle." And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And then I hit you up like a week later, like being like, "This is really presumptuous, but like, would you want me on your podcast?" Being like, "I'm so interesting. I'm sure you want me on." I was like, so I like messaged you and I was like, hey, like just so you know, like I love your podcast and I was really appreciative when you said that you wanted to have me
Oh,
on.
of course. And folks out there, because Ray is not the first person that has done that. There have been a handful of guests, multiple that this has happened this way. Please do not. If someone that was a guest, especially, is telling you to hit me up, do it.
Yeah.
That's the point of this podcast. And yeah, it's been great. That was a while ago, right? Because it was around the time that the episode
Yeah.
I did with
Yeah, it's been
Harrison
a
and
minute.
Ziggy. Yeah, but it's been the winter and Christmas for me and New Year's, and but also, as I mentioned before, one of the things I try to do as much as I can is to consume the media or the content that the guests have created. And for
Yeah.
you, we had a book, which
Yes,
is
yeah.
so fucking exciting. This is the first
Thank
book. You're
you.
the first book, Ray. The first
Yeah,
author that's been on here.
thank you. Oh my God. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. I've actually wanted to have more authors come on because, as I said, I like to consume the content as I'm preparing for the episodes, and it's hard to have multiple music at the same time because I do listen to a lot of books on audiobook as well.
Yeah.
And I read, right? Which you don't have
hmm
an audiobook, by the way. You should.
Yeah, I'll get on that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, like it does make it a little bit. Uh, I don't even know. I can't think of the word, but it makes it more. Spices it up to have different things to
Yeah.
consume.
Yeah.
Um, we're definitely going to talk about this. Why don't we just
Absolutely.
talk about it? Because I'm excited about
Sure.
it.
Yeah,
The
sure.
book is called The Fall. I don't even know the name. The Fall of the House of Edgar. You know why I don't know the
Yes.
name though, Ray? This is one of the rare books that I read all at once.
Yeah.
I just sat
Yeah.
down and read it one
That's
night.
so awesome. That's so
Does
awesome. I
that
really
happen a lot with
appreciate
this
that.
book? Have you heard that feedback?
Um, so The people that in my life that have read it have said that they read it over time. Like my friend from high school read it, and she read it over the course of a week. And then like Andrew read it, and Andrew Newport, you've had on the show, yeah, my
Mm-hmm.
adopted older brother, he read it, and it was like a few weeks because he's the busiest human being I've ever met in my life. And like a few weeks went by, and then literally like one day he was like giving me updates about like, hey, I got to this part in the book. And then one day he texted me and he was like, I'm done. It's awesome. I loved it. And I was like, thank you.
Yeah, it
So
really
yeah.
is. I was away for a weekend with my family, and I had
Mhm.
saved. I brought the book, and I sat down one night, and I literally just stayed up until like 2 a.m. This was like
Oh my God.
I stay up until like 1 a.m. every night anyway.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I just
No, I
sat
do
down and read
too,
it.
but just the fact you stayed up to read it, I'm so honored.
It
Thank you
was
so much.
really good. I'm not
Thank you.
like usually I fall asleep when I'm reading. I do read a lot, but I don't read a lot at night because I will fall
Yeah.
asleep. But this was a page turner, and it's a thriller kind of thing, right? And
Yeah, a little bit.
I liked how you laid out the chapters where there were
Yeah.
like one, and I'm not going to try to spoil anything in the book in case people decide that are listening to go and purchase it and read it because
Yeah.
it could be spoiled, sure, like because it makes it a page turner not knowing, but
Yeah.
it is alternating between like Edgar Allan Poe's story and the story of
Mhm.
the main character who's Jimmy. Is it Jimmy? I
Yeah,
think. Yeah.
Jimmy and Tom. Yeah, so I had had interest in a while for a while. So I adore Edgar Allan Poe. I'm obsessed. I He's absolutely my favorite writer. And like my friends will often like if they have a question about anything having to do with like Gothic literature, they'll be like, "Well, Ray knows most Edgar Allan Poe by heart," and I'll be like, "Hi." Yeah, but I had been toying with the idea of writing like historical fiction for a while, but I couldn't like it was never really something I had been interested in, but I wanted to try it. And then I was like trying to write something and I like couldn't really do it. I was trying to write originally about like, you know, American colonialism and like stuff like that. And I was trying to write like old timey stuff. And then the story, so the story of how I came up with the idea for the book is actually like it's kind of embarrassing because it involves a lot of sangria in my college apartment with my
Okay.
roommates. So I like was sitting, we stayed up really late one night, me and my roommate Aleda, and I drank a whole bottle of sangria by myself, and I was like, I was really like under the influence, and all of a sudden I turned to her and I was like, have you ever read The Cask of Amontillado? And she was like, what is that? And I was like, it's an Edgar Allan Poe story. And then she was like, no. And I explained it to her. She was like, oh, that sounds so interesting. And then in a moment of like pure like alcohol driven brain processes, I said, what if it was a true story? And then I pulled out my tablet and just started writing and like laying out a story. And then like the next day I woke up hungover. It's like, what is this monstrosity that I just created in a Google Doc? And then I was like going through it and I was like, wait, like that some of this could work. So I like soberly rewrote it and I had like a whole book laid out and then I started writing the chapters and the original stuff, the idea that I had was um uh, each chapter would start with a historical fiction like flashback to Edgar Allan Poe and then it would flash forward to modern day. So I don't know what to call it if it's historical fiction or modern fiction. It's kind of a combination of both because the prologue and the epilogue are both historical fiction and then each chapter starts with a scene from Edgar's life that's like based on true events that happened in his life.
Wow. Okay, cool. That was one of my questions I was going to ask was how did like what from that book is actually true and how did you find all of that information? Or did you just already
Yes.
know it like what's his name? Was it Tom? What was the guy's name? The guy
Tom,
that,
yeah,
yeah,
the other
Tom,
teacher,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I based a lot of Tom's love for Edgar Allan Poe on my own
Okay.
because I have like all this useless knowledge about Edgar Allan Poe's life that I would never use except for writing a book. But I knew a lot of it, and then I did a lot of research into it as well. Um, but what's true is, so the only things that are fictionalized, in Edgar Allan Poe's life are, the events with, Max, his, best friend. I created, um, a character to be his best friend, and, the end ones with Mr. Hendrickson.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I don't want to
But
spoil, like I'm trying.
yeah.
I know.
So
Okay,
a
I
lot of
gotcha.
it was based on, there is a, I'm not going to spoil it, but there is a conspiracy theory around Edgar Allan Poe's death because it is true he went to get on a train to go to Richmond, I believe. He was going somewhere. He was on a train. I think he was either going to Richmond or Philadelphia.
Philadelphia. I
And
just read this
yeah,
last
he was
night.
going to
Yeah.
Philadelphia and then he disappeared and was not seen. And then 5 days later, he was found wearing someone else's clothes and like feverish and not making sense in a gutter, in Baltimore. So nobody really knows what happened because he wasn't coherent for a few days and then he died. Um, but
But he
it's all
kept saying a
true, you
name
know.
too, right? I saw that on at least on Wikipedia. I don't know how much is true on there,
Yes,
but
yeah, he did keep saying a name. I did not involve that in the, thing because, there's so many questions about what he was saying, and who he was talking about. Um, but he was found in a gutter and he wasn't making sense, and so there are all these like theories about where he was in the 5 days between when he went missing and when he showed up, in Baltimore. And, I thought it would be really fun to tie into everything, a kind of creating my own theory for what potentially led up to, Edgar Allan Poe's death.
it's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool.
Thank
I
you.
love the idea,
Thank
and
you.
I
Yeah.
I wasn't sure, and I like that you used your own creative liberty with
Yeah.
Hendrickson. That was one of my
Yeah.
favorite elements of the story too, and
Thank
it
you.
seemed real. That was actually what I was
Yeah.
looking up. I was like, is this actually a
Oh
real
yeah.
thing?
No, thank you. Yeah. It is true that, this is a big part of, the story is he talks about how he had a drinking problem, and that's also true. But there was, I watched a video, um BuzzFeed Unsolved, when they were still, doing those videos, did a video about Edgar Allan Poe's death, and that was where I learned that, um canonically Edgar Allan Poe, had a genetic, uh factor to him where his body couldn't properly process alcohol. And he had to quit drinking because his doctor said if he went on another alcohol binge, it would kill him, because his
Gotcha.
body couldn't process alcohol
So that was
correctly.
true because you mentioned that in the book as well.
Yeah, that was true. That's in the book. He couldn't, properly process alcohol, and so he had to stop drinking, and he had a drinking problem. He was very clearly, struggling with some kind of mental illness, so he was self-medicating. Um, and, historians believe he was some type of bipolar. Um, so he was self-medicating with alcohol, but he had to stop doing that because it would have killed him.
Yeah, that's crazy. And that's really
Yeah,
tricky. I mean, back in the 1800s, too, it's not like today, right? You didn't have the same
yeah.
kind of medication that you could get today.
Yeah, yeah, and that actually is a theory about how he, died, is that he went on a drinking binge and his body couldn't handle it.
Yeah, but then they can't explain the clothing.
Yeah, they couldn't explain that, so that's like one part of the theory of
Yeah.
stuff. So there's multiple like theories about how he potentially died.
Yeah, this is a whole like I didn't know this was a thing. How did you get into that part of it? Did you already know that when you were
So that I already knew. I was already, involved with, knowing about Edgar Allan Poe's death and knowing that there were, mysterious circumstances surrounding it. I learned a little bit more. The picture on the back of the book is actually me sitting at Edgar Allan Poe's grave. In May of last year, yeah, in May of last year, I had submitted the book to publishers, and I had submitted it to uh, B&N Press, which is Barnes and Noble Publishing, and I wanted to get my mind off of it. So me and my person I was friends with at the time took a weekend in Baltimore, and we went down and we went to his grave. We saw the museum that's his house. We went to the Enoch Free Library in Baltimore, and they were kind enough to, if you walk in and say, I wrote a novel about Edgar Allan Poe, the librarian lost her mind, and she was so kind. And they have special collections about Edgar Allan Poe. So they had like unpublished letters. They had a lock of his hair. They had a piece that had chipped off from his coffin when he was being buried. It was insane, and they were really kind, and they laid everything out for me because clearly the person who was in charge of it was like, oh, this guy cares about Edgar Allan Poe almost as much as I do. So we went down and we spent the weekend in Baltimore, and I learned a lot about the mysterious circumstances around his death, which I already knew about from the person at the library, which was awesome. And then it was actually really funny. We did all the Edgar Allan Poe stuff in a day, and then that night we were in the Airbnb, and I got the email that my book had been picked up by B&N Press.
Oh, no
Yeah,
way.
and I got the email that they had decided to publish it, and I just had this weird moment of like, oh my God. So it felt um, very like, it felt like fate that I had been there, and then I got the email, and they were like, yeah, that they decided to publish it.
That's amazing. And how long did
Yeah.
it take you? I've only tried to write a book once,
Mm,
and it took me a while to write the first chapter. It was a nonfiction book. And they
mm,
came back with like way too many changes for me to handle, and I was like, forget this. I already spent like three
yeah.
months. How long did it take you?
So so I started the book in fall of my junior year of college, so that was 2021. I started the book in fall of 2021. And then I finished it in probably December of 2022. It took me about a year. I did a lot of drafting and editing. I sent it to a few people who helped me edit it and go through it and stuff like that. And then I started trying to get it published in April, and then in May it got picked up.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, so it takes like a year, a solid year, right?
Yeah, just about. Yeah. The final draft was done in April. Then I sent that out, and then it got picked up in May.
And how do you do it? Like, do you start? Well, I guess it's different for everyone, just like a song, right? But you said you started with an outline, right, from that night
Yeah, I
of.
started by like just bullet pointing different things that could happen in the story, and then as time went on, the outline kept evolving, and it got progressively more and more um, intricate and involved, and it just kind of happened. I had the first chapter written in the fall, and then I didn't touch it until the spring, or the first two chapters written until the spring. And then that was that night that me and my roommate I was drinking sangria. And then I outlined the whole thing. And then it was like, oh, this is a thing. So I went back and changed the entire thing that I had written and created something new with this outline that I had. And it was mostly just like bullet pointing and then like changing things as I went along. But having the outline really helped because it felt like I was kind of just filling in the blanks of like what I needed to write. So the writing came very naturally when I had ideas for like each chapter.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really. I respect it a lot because it's a lot of material you have to go through. And
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of research. It was a lot of taking my own knowledge and then also like doing a lot of research and like finding different things.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. And it's cool, you know what? It's really cool that you were able to do this like historical fiction thing because you get to kind of scratch both itches. I'd imagine if you're doing a full nonfiction book, and mine was like a programming book, right? So it was a
Hmm.
completely different type of
Yeah,
situation.
yeah.
But like for like a regular nonfiction like historical book, it's probably all research and very little. I'm sure it has a lot of there's a lot of distilling and refining and putting together the arc of the story. But when you get
Yeah.
to do the blended one, the historical fiction,
Yeah, it was
you
really
both.
cool. And my favorite part of doing it was that in the book, so the premise of the book is basically these two high school teachers are doing a research, their own personal research project, to find out if a cask of Amontillado, which is one of Poe's famous short stories, was based on a true story, and if Poe picked it up somewhere. Um, so I had seen like blogs and like message boards and different like community places where people have debated if like the things that Edgar Allan Poe wrote about were things that he was doing, like they were crimes he was committing. And a lot of people were saying no, like he was way too depressed, and like people around him were always describing him as like being very gentle and like, like he had his moments and he would have fits, but he was always generally a good person. And so people were like, that doesn't really seem like it makes sense. And I was like, well, what if he picked it up somewhere and wrote about it? Like, what if he heard this story, like, on a night where he was drinking in a bar and he wrote about it? So that was what the premise of the story is. Um, so pretty much, I loved being able to do the combination of modern and historical fiction because the research that I did leading up to the book is the process that is the research that Jimmy and Tom do in the book.
Yeah.
So all the research I was doing was research that they were doing. The only thing that I fictionalized in their research process that was not my research process was reading his journals, because there's, even if he, I don't know if he did have journals. If he did, I would not have access to them. But they go through that in the book, and so that was the really the only part of the research process that wasn't my research process.
Well, and the Italy thing, but I don't want to spoil. I'm
Yeah.
assuming you didn't go to Italy.
No, I did not go to Italy. I would love to go to Italy, but no, I didn't hop on a last minute red eye to Italy.
Yeah. No, but that's cool. I can see that now. I didn't actually pick up on that when I was reading the book, but
Hmm.
I can see how that actually is kind of fun because you're like using characters, but you have the nonfiction of your own research that you're baking in as well, which
Yeah.
is kind of cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
I dig it. Oh yeah. Um, all right. So Edgar Allan Poe in general, I've always liked him. Probably not as much as you at this point, Ray. I haven't gone on. I'm on like level one. You know.
Yeah.
I had a history teacher or a literature teacher rather, but he was really into Edgar Allan Poe. So when I had him, it was kind of like he was like, "Yeah, the syllabus is cool, but we're gonna like sub out half of the stuff with Edgar Allan Poe." Um, I remember this because he read the bells. You know the bell. Of course, you know the bells, right? Uh,
Yeah, I do know the bells.
but anyone from our grade will laugh because we had this girl. She had the best laugh. Has the best laugh of all time, and she would laugh in class inappropriately at things. And our teacher
Yeah.
was so into Edgar Allan Poe, and he was like, "I'm gonna read the bells to the class," and he read it like it was a poetry slam. Like he was Edgar
Yeah.
Allan Poe reading it at a poetry slam.
Yeah.
And I remember him reading it and thinking it was cool, but being like, he's very into it. And then all of a sudden, it's happening as loud as she can. She claps and
Yeah.
everything. And we're all like, what are you doing? And I'll never forget the bells.
Yeah, the bells gave me and the very beloved Harrison. A very funny memory. I dragged him with me to see a play. It was not an amazing play, but it was dramatic readings of Edgar Allan Poe's like short stories, poetry, stuff like that. And it was very much something that should have been in like a high school like assembly.
Hmm.
And so this guy was, I don't even remember his name, but he was reading The Bells. And it was like a video of him in a straitjacket, like very
Whoa.
dramatically reading The Bells. But he does say The Bells quite a few times in the poem, but he added saying The Bells probably like 40 times more
Oh
than
my god.
Edgar Allan Poe
Yeah.
says it in the poem, and he says it so dramatically. So there are moments where like me and Harrison like will be hanging out, and the two of us would just it just became an ongoing joke where we would just go the bells, and we just do that. We just do that to each other, like the bells, and we do that to each other all the time because it was just like the bells, bells, bells. So me and Harrison to each other will just say that, and we'll just dissolve into like laughter. And we went out afterwards. We actually ended up at a bar that was doing a Taylor Swift album release party that
Really?
night, and we ended up sitting in this bar, sitting next to each other, and just being like, "What the hell did we watch?" Like we were like, we were like drinking beer at a bar and being like, "What just happened?" Like, what was that last like hour and a half of our lives?
That's amazing. I'm hoping the bells didn't take an hour and a half to read. There was other
It was
stuff.
like a good portion of
Was it?
it. And we just like now we still like I have such fond memories of the bells now because now every time I think of it, me and Harrison like make eye contact and we're like the bells.
I'm glad you guys share that with me because when I was like I forgot about that until I was reading the Wikipedia for Edgar Allan Poe
Yeah.
recently, and I had the same reaction. I was like, "Oh shit, the bells!"
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
it's hilarious.
that teacher, he was so good. I loved him. I generally didn't like literature class that much because I
Yeah.
am a big reader and I would want to read my own stuff. But
Yeah.
but he was really good and he picked good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like we all have that one literature teacher that we will literally never forget. Mine was my eighth grade English teacher. He was just the greatest human being. I was really not doing well for most of, my adolescence. And, he would let me, like, he was the teacher that, like, his class was the one place I wasn't getting bullied because middle school sucks for everyone. And, his class was the one place I didn't get bullied. His classroom was where I would hide out during lunch and recess because I was having panic attacks at recess. And so he would let me sit with him and we would just shoot the shit and, like, talk. And he was absolutely just the kindest. Like, I still go back and visit him because he had such an impact on me. Like, he was such a positive influence on me. And I feel like everyone has that one literature teacher that like they will absolutely never forget.
Literature teachers are probably whole in whole. I've had the best experience with them. This one teacher, it was her last year. She was retiring, and she just was like, again, she was like, forget the syllabus. We're just reading whatever I want. And I don't even
Yeah,
remember,
yeah.
we read all these, like, dystopian, like, we read, like, 1984 and Brave New World, all of those books. Like, she had, like, her own sci-fi dystopian syllabus she pulled out, which was
Yeah,
cool.
1984 was the first time I watched a high school English teacher get a bunch of angry, hormonal teenagers to care about something other than them, what's going on in their lives.
Mm,
So it was the first time I had ever seen a teacher manage to enrage an entire classroom of people where when they got to the end, everybody was like, "Where's the sequel?" And everybody was like, "Where's the sequel where they take down Big Brother?" And the teacher was like, "There is no sequel. That's the ending." And I
yeah.
remember this one kid like raging and being like, "You can't end it there. It has to have, you can't end it. The bad guy can't win." And she was like, "Well, that happens sometimes." And everybody in the classroom was like, "No!" Everybody was so mad because it went against everything we had been raised to believe, which is like that good triumphs evil. And then you read 1984 and you come to, and it's like your innocence is like shattered and you're like, oh my God, that's not always the case. Like good doesn't always win. And that
Mm-hmm.
was the first time I had ever seen a classroom of teenagers care about something other than their own immediate experience. And it was a really
That's
interesting
cool.
thing to see. I was definitely an observer in high school, so it was definitely really interesting to see all these kids like care about something other than themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't know if the whole class was like that. Um, can't remember.
Yeah, I remember the kids being like really infuriated and kind of like blaming the teacher and being like, "Why'd you make us read this shit?" Like,
Yeah. What was tougher for you? Was mid For me, middle school was tougher than high school, I think. You mentioned this
um,
before.
honestly, high school was probably harder than middle school, because high school, so I from I was on a very steady downcline mental health wise, from a young age on. So I would say I started struggling with my mental health when I was probably 9 or 10. And then it really came to a head in my sophomore year of high school. I was briefly hospitalized for a while, like I was not really doing well. And then the last 2 years of high school were still really rough because I was like trying to like figure out like, okay, like, I got to get better. So now I have to do the work to get better. And it was figuring out medication the whole time and, the right therapy and stuff like that. So high school was definitely really challenging purely because my mental health was so bad in that time.
I feel you. I don't think it was as bad, but I've had my own mental health issues that
Yeah.
are unique. Everybody's are unique to themselves,
Yeah.
right? And like mine, I kind of like. I think they were bad in high school for sure. Mine mostly revolve around me having PTSD from being very squeamish in school. So I will faint in biology. I'll faint in like a health class when they're talking about like vitamins and supplements. Like that's how
Yeah.
squeamish I am. Okay, but
Yeah.
it's because of the. It's not squeamish, right? Like it's just because of the anxiety of being in a room like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
dealing with that in high school was hard, but it actually happened to me in middle school more than high school,
Yeah.
which kind of picks the scab, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I think the hardest time for me with that actually was when I was about 20. I mean, in college, it was tough
Hmm.
in those
Yeah.
long classes because my
Yeah.
mental health is like, for me, I'm very fortunate where it's only if I'm
Hmm.
in a classroom. Otherwise, or at work at a
Yeah.
meeting and somebody's like, if I'm out to lunch at work and somebody's like, hey, I went snowboarding and my bone popped out, I'm like,
Oh, jeez.
fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I will say that I think my freshman year of college was rock bottom for me.
Mm.
I think I was going progressively down more and more, and then the summer right before I started college, I lost a family member to suicide, and I started getting progressively worse and worse. And then I hit rock bottom February of 2020, actually, and then I used lockdown to like get myself together because I was like, I can't live like this anymore. So I used lockdown and then got progressively better and better.
Wow. I want to just
Yeah.
like give you a round of applause for that, Ray, by the
Uh,
way,
thank you.
because a lot of people use lockdown in a destructive way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I used lockdown as like a means of like, when will I have this time again?
Yeah,
So,
I
yeah.
kind of did too. My son was born in January 2020. And
Oh,
in
wow.
March, I was supposed to go back to work, and
Hmm.
I remember I was like kind of BSing a little bit at the time. I was like,
Yeah.
hey, this COVID thing, I think I'm going to stay home for an extra week. I was
Yeah.
supposed to start, and then during that week, they sent everyone home. And for,
Yeah.
like, I
Everything
haven't
shut
really,
down.
yeah, and I haven't really gone back. I used to work in New York City, and I don't, like, really
Hmm.
go as much like, I've only gone, like, 4 times since
Yeah.
COVID. And like, as a parent, a new parent, what more can you ask for than just like all of this time with your children?
Absolutely.
I've
Yeah.
never,
Absolutely.
for my own personal life, the lockdown was really good for me in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm glad to hear that. I really am, because it was terrible. People, a lot of people died. A lot of people got really sick and lost family
Yeah.
members, but the good part about it was, if people were able to take that siesta from life and
Hmm.
get a reset, hey, I'll take that. I'd rather do that than, like, my great grandma came here from Germany during World War II. They were not wanted. I think it was because they were from like Romania or somewhere like that. I don't
Yeah.
know, but there was something happened where they weren't allowed to be in Germany,
Hmm.
and they like came here, and it took like 3 years. I'll take COVID over that.
Yeah.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
Like sitting at home with my son spraying Lysol on our groceries. I'll do that
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
forever.
I've had COVID twice. One time was at the very beginning of 2021, like right before the vaccines were a thing. And then once was in January. Yeah, this past January, Andrew actually gave me COVID. So
Oh no.
he was sick and we spent a lot of time together. And then literally like 2 weeks he was fine. And then I started getting sick and then I ended up in the emergency room because
Oh no.
I was starting to get incoherent and it was
Yeah.
like really a problem. We were at actually Cedar Bean's open mic in Cedar Grove and I started like feeling like I was going to collapse. So Andrew like took me to the hospital and they were like, "You have COVID." And Andrew was like, "Oh my God, I was just sick a couple weeks ago. I think I gave you COVID."
Did
And
he get
we
it
had a
from
show that
Harrison?
weekend that we had to cancel. It was awful.
Harrison was saying he gave everybody COVID last time he was on this podcast. It could have been. Did he give
I
Harrison
I
it,
do think I've
or did
heard
he
the
get it from
story
that?
of Harrison being a super spreader,
Yeah,
uh, and Andrew in the Valentine show.
yeah,
I
yeah.
do think I heard that story.
Um, yeah. COVID's rough. I actually never had it until around the same time. I got it. I had it
Yeah.
on. I took a test on Christmas Day or Christmas
Mhm.
Eve, one of those two, and I
Yeah.
had it. But man, it's different.
Yeah, it was kind of inevitable because a lot of the people, the people in the music scene that I'm a part of, we spend so much time together. So it was kind of inevitable that one of us was going to get sick, and then
Sure.
it was Andrew, and then it was me, um, which was like, how did it estimate me? We had a show that weekend that we had to postpone because I was in isolation and I felt like absolute garbage.
Yeah, and that sucks. I had that just happen. I don't know if you know Scott. Do you know Scott Jung? Have you ever met him?
I don't think so.
Okay, yeah, he used to be around and go to the Fine Grind a lot, and he played. Him, Andrew, and I did a lot of shows and stuff together, and we
Oh,
did like
nice.
a writers in the round thing. And we were trying to
Hmm.
do. It'll be coming, so I'm announcing it now. So if Andrew and Scott are listening, I'm holding you to this. We were gonna do a writers in the round.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
But yeah, Scott got COVID. We had a date set, and he got COVID, so I have to reach. And then, yeah, I don't know. I just got busy, and then you hit me up. I put you on the schedule, and I'm like, just forget them for a while. I'll reschedule it. Like
Screw
it's easy.
them.
Well, it's just easy to reschedule because they've already been on. Yeah,
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah.
like, but I do kind of want to do the union, the bond between me, Andrew, and Scott. We kind of all became friends because we all were playing Irish folk music, and
Yeah.
our high holiday is coming up, so it might be
High
fun.
holiday. How I dream of Maddie Callahan.
Exactly. I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
think Maddie Callahan. We did one show one time where we swapped songs. So I
Okay.
played Soul, Andrew's song,
Yeah. Oh, that's such a sick
but
song.
I feel like Scott played Maddie Callahan. I think he did.
Okay. Yeah, so Andrew, this says a lot about my relationship with Andrew and how much I adore him. My top artist on Spotify Wrapped was Andrew, and my
Nice.
top five songs were all Andrew songs.
That is amazing,
Which
Ray.
is like Andrew is constantly like he'll say like, he's always joking about like, oh, Andrew the Valentine's number one fan, and it absolutely is me because I go to every show and I listen to all of Andrew's music and stuff. So, it's been really funny, and now me and Andrew are making music together and stuff like that. But I cover his songs all the time. Like it was really funny. I did a cover of his song Dreams,
I don't know if
which
I know
is
that one.
from it's from earlier album. It's Moth.
Oh, I know
That was
Moth.
way before my time. Yeah, yeah. I just realized I said way before my time and made Andrew sound ancient. I meant way before my time,
Your
meaning like
musical time.
before I came on the scene.
Yeah.
I'm the new guy. So no, yeah, I did a cover of it and I do it a way that Andrew doesn't do it anymore. Which is like the way it is on the recording. And I did it at open mic, and then Harrison told Andrew that he's not allowed to do it anymore because that's my song. And it's like, dude, no. But I cover his music a lot. He's absolutely like people will be like, "Oh, who's your favorite artist?" And I have to be like, "Okay, so I have this brother."
No, that's really cool. That's like what I was talking about before we started recording. That's kind of what I've been aspiring to do. I didn't
Yeah.
make it this year. I don't think. I think my top 5 had podcast guests, but my
Okay.
top 1 artist was, I believe it was the Misfits, and that's because I
Okay.
had never really listened to them too much, and then I
Yeah.
decided I wanted to go to their original Misfits show, and I had to like quickly
Yeah.
onboard. And all their songs, this happens to me too. Like all their songs are like 1 or 2 minutes, and then they become my number one artist.
Yeah.
Um, but I was a little depressed about it because that's part of the point of the
Yeah.
podcast is to like listen to music of folks I know. How did you and Andrew meet? How long have you known Andrew?
Okay. So the first I met Andrew for the very first time at the very end of no, it was the very beginning of the summer of 2022. I met him and I went to the open mic fine at the Fine Grind for the very first time, and I think I played a song that I never play anymore. But like and then he was very kind and he was very happy to see me, and I was very at the time I was like very bubbly and outgoing and energetic. So we like kind of matched energy a little bit. So we were chatting for a few minutes and he said that he was hoping I would come back. And then I went back. I didn't go back until because I was still in college at the time and I was away for college in Hackettstown. Um, so Sunday nights was hard for me, but at the very beginning of January of 2023, I got in a car accident and I had a concussion. So it was a Sunday night over my Christmas break, and I like couldn't look at my phone because you're not supposed to look at screens, so I couldn't be on my phone for
Mm.
very long. And I was just bored. I didn't have any plans. I was chomping at the bit. So I was like, you know what? Like I'm gonna go to that open mic at the Fine Grind. Like, a couple months before I had gone on a date at the Fine Grind, happened to be on a Sunday night. Andrew came over to say hi and he was like, "Oh, hey, are you here for open mic?" And I was like, "No." And I honestly couldn't remember his name at the time. But the guy that I was with, he was like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "I think his name might be Andrew." And he was like, "How do you know him?" And I was like, "We're never going out again." So
Yeah.
I was like, he got so like offended that I
Weird.
spoke to another man, and it
Yeah.
was just really kind of hilarious. But um, so I like was thinking about like going back because I was like, oh, I have to tell him that like he saved me from a really awful date. Um, and then I went back, but I didn't play because I had a concussion. And I walked in, and he was like, "Oh my God, like you're back!" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Are you playing?" And I was like, "No, I'm concussed." And he was like, "Oh, all right." And so I just kind of like sat in the back. And then I didn't go back again. I'm very open about this now. I was very closed off about it at first, but I was a I was subjected to sexual assault in beginning of April of 2023, and I had like a whole nervous breakdown because of it. I was really not doing well, and I kind of fell apart. I didn't leave my bed all month. And then May 7th, I started going to open mic because the day before I graduated college and I moved back home. And I was sitting at open mic and I sat in like the very back to the side because I was like, nobody look at me or I'm gonna cry. I was like very afraid of talking to anybody. I was very skittish. And Andrew came over to me, and he's so friendly and he's high energy. He's like, "Oh my God, hi, it's so good to see you." And I was very withdrawn. I was very quiet. My voice was very small, and that was not what he had ever seen from me. So he picked up on something really not being right, and went over to his co-host Rob Janos and was like, "Hey, you're gonna host tonight. Have fun." And grabbed his drink and sat with me and was like, "So tell me about college." And he sat with me for the entire open mic and just like got to know me. And at the time, the whole world felt very unsafe. So here was like this person that I was like, "Oh, you're the first person that's felt safe to me in an entire month." So I started gravitating to him, and we spent some time getting to know each other, and we got very close very fast. Um, but like it all kind of came down to a day where we were sitting in Cedar Beans because I had never been to Cedar Beans, and he was showing it to me, and he was like, "So are you okay? And don't tell me you are because you're not." And I just broke down and told him everything. I told him about what had happened in April, and I was expecting a bad reaction because that was what I had gotten up to that point. And he was like, "Do you want to talk about it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And we got really close really fast, because he kind of, I gravitated to him, and he was hesitant at first because, you never know what a new person's intentions are.
No.
But
Yeah.
then, we had a conversation, and he very kindly was like, in July, like, "What are you like looking for from me?" And I was like, "Dude, like, I just really need a friend." And we have been inseparable ever since.
That's a great story. Thanks for sharing that, Ray.
Yeah, absolutely. When he adopted me as like, I call him big bro, he calls me little bro. Like, we he talks when we tag each other on social media, it's like I said something really funny and he posted it with like "shit little bro says" or something like that. So we're very close. He's my brother. We're family.
That's a beautiful thing, and I'm gonna give Andrew a little plug right here because
You
you
should.
just did too, and like he for those because if someone's listening that doesn't know Andrew, I know that a lot of folks have been from the fine grind
Hmm.
Ridgewood coffee scene on the
Yeah.
show and listening, but there's folks I know that are from other circles as well. Andrew, you should go back and check out a few of his episodes. He's more than just a musician, he's also a music therapist, and he's a very empathetic, kind person, in addition to being a great open mic night host and open mic night participant and community builder. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
And I love hearing that because that's what I don't want to use his brand because that's not what it is, right? But that's what Andrew is all about. And when you go
Yeah.
to his open mic night, that's how you feel. And I've actually only been to like 3 or 4 of Andrew's open mic nights where he's hosting
Hmm.
because we had met we met at the Fine Grind as participants for a while, and then I saw him at Trend open mic night, and I was like,
Hmm.
"You're the dude that's always at the Fine Grind. Like, I should know you. Like I'm
Yeah.
just not gonna like ignore that I've seen you a bunch of times."
Yeah.
And we became friends through that, and then we ended up hosting the Fine Grind on off weeks for a while before COVID.
Hmm. Hmm.
And he would come to mine. I wouldn't always be able to make it out because my schedule was tough and I was working in
Yeah.
the city, but he would come to my open mic night as a participant, and sometimes he'd be the only person there. And I had a bunch of conversations with him during that time. We jammed a few times at his apartment. He did a few proto Rich Sony podcasts. I think there's 2 unreleased episodes that I gotta
Oh,
put up
nice.
of of before I even had the Rich Sony podcast when I was trying out this like cringy, I would call it organic music now
Yeah.
podcast. But like I got to know him probably not as well as you know him, but I know enough
Mhm.
about Andrew to know that he's a beautiful person,
Yeah.
and enough of building him up, but also just talking from a pragmatic level. He's a great music therapist because he
Yeah.
lives it, right? Like the thing is that's so beautiful about his open mic night is he's a music therapist and he's doing like the thing that this your story shows that, right, where he's like,
Yeah.
Rob, we're gonna talk to somebody. I'm gonna come and talk to someone because that's what this is
Yeah.
all about. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Um,
Yeah.
the question I have for you from that is, and we were talking about this a little bit before about music therapy, right? How, what role does music have as a therapeutic device in your life?
Yeah. So, music has had two different functions for me. With listening to music has always been a distraction. It's been an escape from whatever torture my brain was putting me through. It's always been like a way of kind of tuning everything else out and just being like, okay, I'm safe in myself and this is what I need and stuff.
Mm,
Also making music, which I had not done very much in the capacity I've been doing it, until I started coming around to Andrew's open mic. Writing songs and creating my own music has been a huge therapy for me because it has increased my self-esteem, it has increased my self-worth, it has given me a way to express myself. Like there are times where I don't know what to say when I'm trying to explain myself to someone, but if I've written a song about what I'm trying to explain, it says everything I need to say. And I can say, hey, here's this thing that I wrote that says exactly what I'm trying to say in a much more eloquent way than I ever could on my own. I wrote a song I've written songs about my experience with coming over, coming out as trans and dealing with that. And, I wrote a song about being bipolar. I've written songs about, you know, things that are important to me, feeling better after feeling, or feeling bad after a period of feeling better, and just knowing it'll come back around and having that hope and, all that stuff. So it's been so amazing to find ways to express myself that are so personal that I can say, this is who I am, this is my experience. I want to share this with you. And that's been very great for someone who was isolated, had really hard time making friends most of his life. To be able to break the isolation and connect with people on such a personal level has been very rewarding, and it's been a very beautiful thing for me.
I love that. And, I get that through your songs. I'm not surprised by your answer at all, and I think that that's really cool. I have done only a little bit of that in my songwriting. My songwriting's a
Mhm.
different beast. It's more in the Edgar Allan Poe kind of arena, where I like
Yeah,
exploring these kind of made up. There's aspects of my life that I turn in there, but they're symbolic. But I think that yours have done a really good job of just saying how you feel and
yeah.
presenting your emotions, and you do that beautifully. I really,
Thank
really
you.
enjoy listening to your music because I feel like it is something that gives you
Thank you. I
that,
really appreciate that.
of course. And how does it feel to do that? Because I don't, I'm not brave enough even to even explore songs like that. Sometimes I almost can't do it. I have to like work on that for sure because I want to. And it's interesting because a lot of guests that come on actually, I think, do that a lot better than I do as a songwriter. And I think I write a different kind of song. I call them fictional songs, right? A lot better than a lot of other songwriters, but that's just also the music I've liked. But how does it feel when you're playing those songs? What emotions do you feel when you're pulling those back up, especially live in front of people?
Yeah. At first it was really scary. I was very, after April, I was very closed off to people and I was very hesitant to open up to people. And then the first song I would say that really made me start feeling comfortable connecting with more people. I'd already been connecting really well with Andrew. And then end of June, I wrote a song um about him called Half Like You, where I just said that like when it was basically, I really look up to you, I really admire you. When I grow up, I'd be really lucky to be even half the person you are, to be even half the man that you are. And I did that at open mic, and I remember getting up there and saying, it was the first time I'd ever played at open mic, and I remember getting up there saying, "Hi, you know, this is who I am. I'm gonna play you guys a song. I'm a terrible songwriter, so please don't hate it. Like, just please." And then I remember playing it, and this random girl, I finished it, this random girl was like, "You're a liar." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I had so many people come up to me afterwards and tell me how much they loved it. Jim Blass actually and I really connected that night. That was the first time I'd ever really talked to him. We got a drink after open mic, and I got to know him, and we started getting tight. And it was just all the people in the scene that I'm a part of made it so much easier. So now it comes second nature to me because it's been so easy to express myself because they have done a beautiful job. Andrew and Jim and Harrison and Ziggy and everyone in that scene has done such a beautiful job of creating this safe space where, you can be yourself, everyone's welcome. No one's judging you. You're not judging me. It's like, we're all welcome and we all have something to bring to the table. And that made it really easy. So now it's kind of second nature, but until I really leaned into the community aspect of everything and the very mutually supportive aspect of everything, I was very hesitant to do it, but it's gotten very easy over time.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. And
Yeah.
it's really special. All the listeners from that scene, if they've been to other ones before, as Andrew and I have, and Harrison, and I'm sure everyone, right? That's not the case everywhere. It's not
Yeah.
always like a
Yeah.
scene like that.
Yeah.
It's special. It's really, really
Yeah.
cool.
I got really lucky to find people that made my life so much more worth being living.
Yeah, wow. That's such a cool statement to make
Yeah.
about, for this podcast.
Yeah.
Because that's that's one of the aspects we only touched upon this, and I kind of left it before when we started the conversation. But one of my interests is in terms of music therapy. Sure, I'd love to explore that a lot more on this podcast. I've talked with Andrew a little bit about it on a couple episodes, and I'm just fascinated in the role of music in
Yeah.
general across the board in terms of its utility for human beings because
Yeah.
it predates language. Dancing is something that's
Mm.
built into us. I see it in children. They just dance before they talk. And
Yeah.
those waves are moving us in a certain way. And then adding words to it, again, also predates writing, right? Like people were
Yeah.
singing epic poetry before they were writing it down. And there's something to that. It's built into us, and I'm so fascinated by it that I want to unravel these layers as I progress on the podcast. I'd like to get
Yeah.
deeper.
Yeah, it's such a driving force. It's such a driving force for human connection that, it's like it's insane how much it can impact uh anyone who listens to it.
Yeah. And that was my question that I was going to ask before was, you had said, and I noticed a lot of parallels between the way that you're talking about music and dealing with mental health issues that I've
Mm.
gotten from it. I think that it's always helped me with that, and it's definitely been. That's why I go back to it. Right? Like it hasn't paid my bills or whatever, but
Yeah.
it always has been where my soul and passion lies, and
Yeah.
I think about it every day. I'm like, why am I spending 8 hours editing this this podcast or whatever? Like what is the why? And there's reasons, right? I'm not saying why am I wasting, but I have to ask myself, and I say like, why am I
Yeah.
doing this? What is the things we're talking about are the reason, and
Yeah.
I ask this question with that in mind. I'm not just casually asking it, and that's why I love this show. Because we could get into this over the course of time, but you had mentioned before that music has played an important role for you. It has definitely played an important role for my trauma too. I definitely
Yeah.
feel that. I could tell you when I would think I'm fainting, if I felt like I was fainting in class, I would be closing my ears and as cringy as it is now, I'd be like reciting Cypress Hill lyrics because I'd be trying to engage my head. Like I'm like just
Yeah.
change. I'd use that as like, and it's Cypress Hill, right? It's not like some Tibetan chant, but it's doing the
Yeah.
same thing, actually. Right? Like I'm closing my ears and I'm saying an equivalent of, instead of saying like so whatever whatever things, I'm saying, so you want to be a rap superstar, live large, big house. It's
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
the same
yeah.
thing though. And
Yeah.
that was in 6th grade, right? Like but
Yeah.
since even then, and even now, music is like I feel like I'm like a pharmacist with it, right? I'm using that
Yeah.
to kind of help guide my emotions, and it's very important
Yeah.
to me what I listen to. You had said you listen to a lot of Andrew's music, and I do as well. And I think that it has a very therapeutic quality to it, given his thing.
Absolutely.
But what else can you recommend to listeners? Having gone through what you've gone through, where do you turn when you need help in terms of music?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say a lot of I listen to a lot of AJR. They've definitely written music. They have a song called Way Less Sad that I love. That's basically the chorus is um I'm not happy yet, but I'm way less sad. And it's kind of celebrating the like I'm not where I want to be, but I'm a lot better than I was, and that's something to celebrate. So I love that. I've definitely been listening to that, and that's been a huge help for me with trauma, and I get panic attacks or flashbacks. I've found a lot of soothing music from Sleeping at Last. I absolutely love his music. He has created these songs. He has a whole album um, based around the solar system, which is just so
Mm.
beautiful. And he has a song called Saturn, which is um, about grieving and mourning. And I listened to that a lot after losing my cousin. And he has a song called, is it Haste, where it's basically like a really hopeful perspective on like, you know what, I'm gonna get better. Like I'm gonna do this. You know, there's a lot of songs from him that are very hopeful and have been very influential in, my recovery and my own, grounding, my own calming down, um, stuff like that. I also really love um, Jim Blass's music. He makes music under Meadowood Lane, and he has a song called Everything Hurts, which
Mm.
is just basically like everything sucks and it all hurts, and I'm trying to deal with it, and I love that. And that's been really incredible. And it's just like I've found so much music that has helped me. A lot of just random folk songs that I find on Spotify. I listen to a lot of Decemberists.
Mm.
That's definitely been a Harrison and Andrew influence on me. um, but I listen to a lot of Decemberists. I think Colin Malloy has a way of saying things that only Colin Malloy is allowed to, in a way that only he's allowed to say them.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Totally.
not in like, oh, he's problematic and he gets away with it, but like no one can use some of the words that he uses. Like he's an English professor, so like no one can use some of the lyrics that he's using, and like people would be like, all right, you're that's ridiculous. But then he does it, and everybody's like, it's poetry, and it's like it's a really wonderful kind of way of doing things. So I would say a lot of those artists have been a very big part of my own recovery.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing those. I'm always
Yeah.
curious to hear, and it's so cool to hear the various influences that all of us friends have. Decemberists
Yeah.
are a common thread, and
Yes.
it's crazy to me. Nick Sagnella, I don't know if you know him. He used to host the open mic night at Fine Grind when I started going.
Yeah,
Um,
no.
he's the first person he's younger than I am. I'm like Andrew's age. I'm 34, and
Hmm.
I listened to the Decemberists in high school, but
Yeah.
that was when I don't think that the Crane Wife was out yet, or it had just come
Hmm.
out. But the big album for me at the time was Castaways and Cutouts and
Yeah.
Picaresque. Picturesque? I
Yeah, I
think it's
love those.
Picaresque. But
Yeah,
uh,
picaresque.
yeah, and like those album the Decemberists have kind of changed over the years, and it was crazy to me talking to Nick because he's like, yeah, they're this like band, the Decemberists. I'm like, I know them from like way
Yeah.
back before I found Bob Dylan. Like, I'm only playing Bob Dylan songs now, but
Yeah.
like I know the Decemberists very well.
Yeah.
And he showed me, which I show my children now, and I think they're beautiful songs, the both of the hymns, right? The January hymn and the
Yeah.
June hymn.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I love that they've kind of sustained through in a very authentic way. I think there's other
Yeah.
bands that are popular now still that I listened to when I was in high school, like the Arctic Monkeys, let's say, who are
Hmm.
still really good. I like them, but they're kind of doing the same thing when I just heard them today at the coffee shop playing Arctic Monkeys, and I was like,
Hmm.
this is cool, but like I don't know if I was young again, like now, I don't know if I would be listening to this because I feel
Yeah.
like it's been played out. Decemberists, I do not feel that way. I feel like they're still going.
No, yeah, I definitely I was exposed to the Decemberists because Andrew early into our friendship made me a playlist of songs that he thought would be helpful to me
Nice.
um and like my recovery. So there was like a Bruce Springsteen song because it's Andrew,
Yeah.
and there was there was I love The King is Dead because Don't Carry It All is on that album,
Mm.
and that was the first December song I'd ever heard because Andrew put it on the playlist, and it's basically like, just going through and trying not to let things weigh you down and trying to, it says, we must bear our neighbor's burden within reason. And a lot of that was like me kind of like Andrew's been a huge support part of my support system. And I remember always being like, oh, like you don't have to do this. And then he would like quote that at me and he would be like, we must bear our neighbor's burden within reason. And I would be like, but so that was the first song I was exposed to and I really love that one. And then I just started exploring it more and I just kind of fell in love with the Decemberists.
That's really funny because I think the
Yeah.
first song that I listened to by them was July July, which it does have a therapeutic element because it's one of the happiest songs I've
Yeah.
ever heard. But then
Yeah.
Castaways and Cutouts, when I like opened the book, so to speak, it was Leslie Ann Levine, which is like a dark ass
Oh,
song.
yeah, I do a pretty good cover of Leslie Ann Levine.
Oh yeah,
I really love that one. Yeah, so my primary instrument is baritone ukulele. Um, and I actually didn't start playing baritone until Andrew got me one for my birthday in October, and then that's been my main instrument lately. And as I've been going through my transition and taking testosterone, my voice has been changing.
yeah.
And my voice was you know, I had come out around the time that Andrew gave me the baritone ukulele, and I started playing it because I realized that when I played it, the tone of it was like making my voice sound deeper, and that was very
Mm,
affirming to me um, as a newly out of the closet trans man at the time, not on testosterone.
I
So
see. Yeah.
that was like a really comforting thing for me. And then now, now that I'm taking testosterone and my voice is different every week, I have to like still play on the baritone ukulele, but like now every week it's like the capo is in a different position for each
Mm,
song. And I'm just like trying to figure it out. But that's that's one that I started doing a cover of when my voice started changing. Um, and I really enjoyed. My voice dropped a little bit, and I was like, I started sounding vaguely like Colin Malloy, and I was like, oh. So I did Leslie and Levine, and I was really proud of that one. I also do a pretty fun cover of O Valencia. That's one I really enjoy.
That's a great one
So
too.
yeah, yeah, they have given me some songs that I can add to my you know, songs that I know. My repertoire, that's what it is.
Your repertoire, yeah.
Yeah.
And before we go back, I'm going to circle back to the voice changing conversation because we had that before
Yeah.
we started recording, and that would be good to talk about. But
Yeah.
I do want to just call out because I'm looking at the track list for a cautionary song, and I remember being in like junior year of high school or something and being like mentioning how it's this like highbrow stuff you couldn't get away with. A cautionary song is like the most eloquent, long-winded your mom joke of all time.
Oh my God.
You
Yeah.
know, and it's like you listen to it a few times and you're like, yeah, but then I'm like, it's actually a your mom joke though. Like it really
Yeah.
is, and it's
Yeah, he's
hilarious.
so great with like the highbrow, like the Mariner's Revenge song,
Yeah, the Mariner's Revenge,
the
exactly.
Mariner's
Yeah.
Revenge
Mm-hmm.
song. That one, like, the first time I heard that, I was like, "How the hell did he get away with this?" Like,
Or
it's
Legionnaire's
like,
Lament. You know, some of these things
yeah,
because I was listening to them in high school. Some of these words I actually like knew for the SAT prep from the
yeah, from the
Shins and the
Decemberists.
Decemberists for
Yeah,
real. You know, I'd be like looking up these words. But
yeah,
yeah, we were talking about your voice changing before, and you were telling
yes,
me about this TikTok trend where you record your voice each week, and I thought that was really interesting, especially
yeah.
given that you're a singer and you have a
Hmm.
beautiful voice, by the
Thank
way.
you.
You know, but pre-transition, right? And
Yeah,
and
thank you
as
so
you're going
much.
through it, you have a great tone and a way to carry the melody.
Thank you.
But I'm sure that taking the testosterone definitely affects
Yeah,
that, right? And that's
yeah,
you're transitioning, right? And how,
yeah.
why don't you give a little bit of some insight for us that aren't as familiar with it?
Absolutely, yes. So, that has been such a great experience. So, I started testosterone, was it January 17th? Uh, yeah, January 17th, I started testosterone. It's been about 6 weeks. Tomorrow is my sixth injection. Um, and it's been great. It's been a really amazing experience. I've started noticing changes in my voice, and that's been what I've been seeing the most difference in. I'm waiting for my facial hair to come in. It was really hilarious. A friend of mine, Rob Janos's wife, Tina, was like, we were having a conversation, and she was saying, oh, Andrew's gonna have to teach you how to shave, and I was like, no, he's not. No, he's not, because I am not going to shave once I have facial hair. Um, but the testosterone has been changing my voice. Week to week, I sound a little bit different. So it's been really amazing. And there is that trend of, every week you take a video and it's like, hi, my name is whatever, and this is my voice X weeks on T. Um, and taking testosterone has been so affirming and just feeling more like I'm becoming the man that I felt like I am for so long. It's been such like a beautiful experience to be like, okay, like, my voice is changing, and suddenly, I'm walking into the post office or the bank to mail something, or I just had my legal name changed to my preferred name. So I was like walking in to get my new debit card, and I walked in and I said like, "Hi, I need a new debit card. Can someone help me?" And she was like, "Sir, I'm sorry, I can't hear you." And going from like always being called ma'am and like someone always misgendering me to now just the sound of my voice is making people be like, that's a man. Like that's such an affirming thing for me. That's been a really nice
I
experience.
can imagine. Wow, that's cool that
Yeah,
that happened.
it's been really
It's
great.
like when you don't get carded when you're over
Yeah,
21. That's the
yeah,
only thing I have similar to that, but like that's a way different feeling, right? But it's a
yeah.
similar type of situation.
Yeah, and I got really lucky to hang out with the people on the scene and everybody, has been so affirming and so kind in my transition. Andrew, Harrison, Rob, Jared Beers, Jim Blass, everybody was already treating me like one of the guys, because that was who I was hanging out with, and I felt comfortable with that. And I think they picked up on me wanting that.
Mm.
And then I came out and I was like, I'm transgender. And everybody was like, oh, no, you're really one of the guys. And I was like, yeah. So everybody's just been so affirming and inclusive and kind and just amazing. Andrew, I'm really bad with needles. So like Andrew helps me with my injection every week. And,
Oh, that's
I'll hang out with
beautiful. Yeah.
Harrison, and Harrison will make a point of like, your voice sounds deeper. And I'm like, I know. So it's like, it's just like a really beautiful thing to have such a nice community around, where it's like, while I'm going through my transition, it's so much easier because my family is supportive and my friends are supportive. And I'm very lucky and privileged to be having the experience in transitioning that I'm having.
I'm so happy for you, Ray. I'm really happy that
Thank you.
that happened. And
Yeah,
I
thank you.
think my big question for you is what is, and you've mentioned a few of them, but if someone is going through a transition,
Mm.
what's the best thing you can do as a friend or a family member? And it's probably different for each, but it might be the same for each. You know more than me.
Yeah, honestly, the thing that's been the best for me is um how nothing really changed,
Mm,
except now we talk about different aspects of my transition, and nothing really changed in the sense of my friends loved me so much before and they love me just as much now. And just seeing, I think the best thing that has been for me is just seeing how my friends are so happy to, you know, include me in everything, and how they're so happy to make sure I know that they support my transition,
mm.
and to make sure they know that like they love me no matter what I am. And I think the greatest thing that you could do for someone who's going through a transition is say, hey, like, I love you no matter who you are. I support you. I'm here for you. And just that is so huge in a transition. Just that for anyone in the community, not even going through a transition, um, people coming out as gay or bisexual, or, wanting to explore different aspects of gender, just saying, I love you no matter who or what you are. I accept you. I support you. I'm here for you. Just being accepted and making sure they know that you love them is just so powerful. And not everybody gets that. And I think it's been a really huge thing that's helped me a lot.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Because I always want to make people feel comfortable, and like when they tell me, but I'm always like, I always wonder. Like, I'm like, what is the best reaction? Because I don't care. Like, I want
Yeah.
to be your friend no matter what. It doesn't matter. You
Yeah,
know.
I think not making a big deal out of it is also really great. I think if someone comes out to you, I think what I said is the best way to deal with it.
Mm,
But also, like, if you meet someone at work, and it's like, oh, hey, and they're like, oh, yeah, me and my boyfriend did this weekend, and they're saying it casually, not being like, your boyfriend, like, it's
mm-hmm.
like, just being like, oh, cool, how long have you and your boyfriend been together, or something like that. It's like, it's a great sort of experience to just say it and have it not be the whole topic of conversation, and just be like, this isn't a big deal. You don't care. That's great. Let's move on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's that's good to hear and have
Yeah.
affirmed. I've had one similar conversation with one of my friends who's gay about similar
Yeah.
thing, and I'm just like, yeah, like exactly. But it also shouldn't be. I'm more interested in the Decemberists in the conversation. Like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that's my,
Yeah.
like so I'm like, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I'd like to meet your significant other or whatever. I'll support you with your
Yeah, yeah,
transition, of course.
absolutely.
But
I would say, there's so many interesting things in my life. There's so many things in my life that are like, so like, not to like, I've been trying to be better about not feeling like a narcissist when I say nice things about myself, but there are very interesting things about me, and being trans is not the most interesting thing about me. There's so many things that, are so much more important.
there are, and I feel that
Yeah.
way. That's how I feel. We didn't even, it
Yeah.
didn't even come up for an hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
but you know, yeah, it's an interesting thing because like people do feel sensitive about bringing it up. I'm sure, you know, like I definitely do, because I want people to feel supported. And this conversation has been really valuable for me in having you share all that and even share
Yeah.
how Andrew has handled it, the saint
Yeah.
that he is, right? And
Oh, yeah.
and I think that music, community music, has such a high utility for not, it's like forget the trans, but any any of us that are going through something
Yeah.
to share is huge. And
Yeah.
while sorry, I had to say this at work recently. I might cut this out. I might not. I also have like a since I had COVID. Like
That's
I'm
okay.
like in meetings all the time. Like recently I had to be like because we used to have a teacher in high school that we would count the amount of times she did that. So now I'm conscious of it because she did it all the
Oh,
time.
yeah, no, I'm not judging. You're
No, I know.
fine.
Yeah, but I'm like anyway, having oh, do you remember what I was? Oh, wait. It'll come to me because it was important. It was damn it. Do you remember what I was saying?
You're saying having like the music community and the sense of like having people around.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah. This is good, important to me. It's stupid, but it's important to me.
Okay.
You had mentioned something that I've asked a few people, and I get mixed responses from folks on.
Hmm.
If you listened to the Jim Blass episode, you may recall that he has a completely different personality than I do when it comes to this. But when I went to the first open mic night, Nick was the host. Andrew may have been there. I don't think he was. Harrison was there that night, though, for sure.
Yeah.
Because, and you'll laugh because knowing Harrison, right? He was all about this. But I went with my wife, and we sit at the table. I have my guitar. I've never played alone. I played drums in bands before and stuff. I never played my own original music in front of anyone. Never performed alone. So I'm like, you know, freaking out. And I'm so nervous, I don't know what to do. I just take out my guitar and start jamming while Nick is playing. Like, I'm just like, I'll just jam along. Like, because I can't, like, sit here like a normal person. I just can't do it. You know, like, I have to, like, I'm too nervous. I need to start. And Harrison, like, sees me starting, and he's like, oh, shit, we're jamming. So he just takes out his saxophone and starts playing, too.
That's the most Harrison thing I've ever heard.
Yeah. I gotta ask him if he remembers this, because I definitely remember it, you know, because I was nervous and stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And then there was this guy, Don, who was like this 90-year-old. Have you ever heard of this guy? Don?
No.
He was a fine grind regular back in the day. He was like a 90-year-old, kind of biggity, like cranky, like savant violinist. But we all like dealt with him, right? And to a deep degree. He like put on some shows and stuff that we were involved with. He was nice enough. He was 90, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like he would show up late, and I'd love playing shows. He'd come when you're playing a show too. Like when you're playing on a Wednesday or whatever, you'd tell him, and he would just show up and not say anything, and he'd just unpack his violin just like I had done with my guitar. I didn't know that he just does this all. Maybe I did. Maybe he did it, and then I copied him. That might have been what happened.
Yeah.
But he just shows up and starts playing violin while people are playing. Even if it's like your first night at the open mic night, he don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like he's just like, and you're like, okay, cool, dude.
Yeah.
And he was really good, though. And it was a lot of fun. I have a few recordings where he played with my music, and he was just doing, like, some fiddle stuff with it. But, yeah, he was going, I was going, Harrison was going, all while Nick is playing his, like, his June hymn or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, so after, like, 6 months, I was like, why does nobody listen to my music? Like, I'm thinking of it afterward. And then I'm like, nobody listens to my music because I didn't want them to until today. Like, I wasn't looking at people in the eye. I was just going up and being like, hey, this is my new song. I'm going to play it for you really quick. You know, very, like,
Yeah.
making people not want to listen to me. And then I
Yeah.
had to start working on being like, hey, I wrote this song this week. And Andrew does a great job of this, where he's like tells the story about it and he like
Yeah.
sucks you in. I had none of that skill set. Jim was
Yeah.
like, no, I completely had that skill set, but I could not write good songs. So I was like having people listen and my songs weren't good. How
Hmm.
did you feel when you first started performing? Was that scary for
So
you?
when I first started performing, I was often getting reprimanded by Andrew and other people at open mic because I would get up there and I was getting people's attention. They were listening to my music and I had good songs. But I would get up there and I would say, "Hi guys, this song is terrible. I'm an
Mm,
awful songwriter. Please give me grace." And then I would play a really good song. And it got to the point that people were like, "Stop introducing." Like Andrew was like we were hanging out one night, we were driving somewhere and I was like, "Yeah, like I wrote a new song," and he looked at me and he was like, "You need to stop introducing your songs with 'Hi, this is terrible,' because they're not terrible." And I was like, "Okay." So I started getting better and better, and then I started looking at the way Andrew and Harrison were introducing their music, and I just kind of adopted that. So I did get up and start being like, "Oh, I wrote this song at this time, and this is what was going on, and this is what I wanted to write about." And I found that people were already listening to my music. I just stopped trying to lower their expectations
mm,
and
mm-hmm.
started leaning into the fact that they were listening and telling them the story. So I do remember that, like, at first, like, I would get up there and I'd be like, "Hi, I'm a really bad songwriter, so just keep that in mind while you listen to this." And it was supposed to be like, "Okay, so don't be awful if this is bad, because I know it's bad." And then I would play it and everybody would be like, "Stop introducing your songs like that because you're saying they're terrible and they're not." And I was like, Okay." So I had kind of the reverse issue where my songs were good and people were paying attention, but I was putting them down because I was
Mm.
like, "Oh, I have to lower their expectations because they're going to think it's good and it's not." And then I kind of got used to just taking on the way that Andrew and Harrison introduced songs with like the story of the song. And I've gotten a lot better about doing that now.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just always curious about that because it's such a pivotal moment for artists, and everybody walks in
Yeah.
with their own mindset. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
this is a perfect segue. We've been going long, but how you feeling? You feeling good? You want to
I
keep
feel
going?
good. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, sure.
I want to talk about your music if you don't mind. Like
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
talk about it because I know that you have is it an EP or an album coming out? I saw you post the
Uh,
album art.
yeah, I'm working on an EP right now.
Sick. Okay. Yeah, and Harrison had told me and talked about this EP, and Ziggy. I don't remember which
Yeah.
one of them was talking about it, but they both were talking about it on the previous episode.
Mhm.
And Latuda is on the compilation, so maybe that's a good
Yes.
place to start with. But I'd love to talk about the music that's going into this EP and the process a
Yeah,
little bit.
absolutely.
Why don't we start with Latuda?
Yeah, so I actually the recording of Latuda is actually being re-recorded for the EP now that my voice has dropped a little bit.
Ooh, okay.
But that recording I did with a friend at his dad has a basement studio and that's where I'm recording my EP. And Harrison asked me if I wanted to be involved with the compilation, and I was really honored. And I had written that song earlier in the year. It's so Latuda is a mood stabilizer, and it is the mood stabilizer I've been on since I was 16. I'm bipolar, um, and I wanted to write a song about my experience before I was diagnosed. And
Ooh.
the experience was I would have incredibly low lows and not very crazy highs, but like, you know, I wouldn't sleep for a week. And that was my hypomania. And I would my parents always know if I'm manic because I'll go downstairs and bake at like 3 o'clock in the morning. That was my thing. Like
Mm.
my mom knew that was manic or that I wasn't doing well, that I hadn't slept. If she came downstairs and there were like 2 dozen muffins like on the counter and I was like passed out on the couch, she was like, maybe you should stay home today
Hmm.
from school. Like maybe you should just stay home and sleep. Which was good on her. But the lows were I was bedridden, I wouldn't get out of bed, I was suicidal, and it was really tough. And I wanted to write a song about the experience of being undiagnosed bipolar and not knowing what was wrong with me, and my parents not knowing what was going on with me, and trying to understand, and just how the mood swings were so intense that I genuinely thought that I was losing sanity. Like I thought I was going crazy. I thought this was something that I would never come back from. I thought I was slowly descending into madness because I was just so unwell. And so I wrote Latuda about that. It was that experience of, one of the lyrics is think I've really lost it this time, because every time I would swing down into a depressive swing, the hypomania I thought that was just me being fine. I thought I was just doing well. And I had slept so much. This was, high school logic. I was like, "Oh, I sleep so much when I'm depressed that when I'm doing well, I have so much sleep stored up that I just don't need to sleep for a
Sure.
week." And I was like, that was progressively becoming clear that that was not normal. So I wrote Latuda about that experience and, swinging down. And every time I would swing back down, I was like, this is it. I've lost it. This is it. I think I've really lost it this time. And that was how I wrote the chorus for Latuda. It's just, I wrote, these mood swings make me feel like I'm losing my mind. And, it was a lot of just a fear of descending into madness. Like it was a
Mm.
fear of, okay, there's something wrong. Am I going to a place that I can never come out of? And so that was always a really big fear of mine. And that was something that I conveyed in the song.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. This song is always gonna have a special place in my heart because every first song I listen to by an artist always gets that
Yeah.
spot, and
Yeah.
I really like it because the way that it's presented with your ukulele and the melody is right on the line of like you don't know what it's going to be at first, but you say it right up front, right? Like you like get into this and you hear it and you're like, okay, this is going to be an interesting song. It's not going to
Yeah.
be somewhere over the rainbow here. Like we're talking
Yeah.
about some real shit. You're flying to Mars and you're crashing back to Earth, right? Which
Yeah.
I do love that lyric very much. I also love
Thank
that
you.
got my wires crossed, right?
Yeah.
But like yeah, like I like the way that that's presented, and I think that that's very like I said, I'm always going to bias myself to the first song I listen to
Yeah. Yeah.
by an artist, but I think that that's representative of my interpretation of your music too. And
Yeah.
like with this specific subject matter, it seems to like set the tone, right? Of this mental health type
Yeah.
focus. Um, and before we open up anything else, I want to say this because I just randomly remembered it. You have the Epiphone. I have the same ukulele as you that you
Well,
used to
Les
have.
Paul.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That thing is crazy.
Yeah.
It's
It's
a
wild.
weird ukulele, right?
Yeah.
That's the only one I own. I happen to like just
Yeah.
randomly pick it, but I like it a lot actually
Yeah.
because it's
My
weird.
Les Paul, the intonation on it is a nightmare. I have to get it
Mine
fixed.
too. Mine has been
Oh
terrible.
yeah. It's been a nightmare. So, ever since I switched to the baritone ukulele, I've been using a Cadence ukulele, and that's been really nice. I keep eyeing some Kala ukuleles that are
Nice.
way out of my budget. There's one
Yeah.
that's like $500, and I'm like, but it's so pretty,
Oh,
and
you
it's
deserve
like,
it.
uh,
Yeah. Um,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. But the Epiphone one is, yeah, I like it. It's a personality. I got it because you could plug it
Yeah.
in. Like
Yeah.
I did the Did you ever hear of the Uke Fest? Have you ever heard of this thing? NJ.
No.
Oh, okay. Ray, we're going. I don't know if I can make
Okay.
it this. I don't know if I can make it this year because of my family commitments, but
Yeah.
maybe next year. But maybe I would go this year if you went to. But there's the
Yeah.
NJ Uke Fest. You should look this up. It's
That
run.
sounds like the greatest place on earth.
Yeah, I think you'll really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Uke Fest is run by the. It's weird because nobody in the fine grind scene or
Hmm.
whatever we want to call it. It doesn't the Andrew scene.
Yeah.
No one in yeah. Um, no one who seems to know about this or talk about the Folk Project. There's like the NJ Folk Project, which
Hmm.
is this whole thing that exists, and they do some
Yeah. I
stuff in
think
Morristown.
I vaguely think I've heard of it.
Yeah, I get their emails, and I haven't engaged too much with them except
Yeah.
for they run the Uke Fest each year, and it's a whole
Okay.
weekend. It's like a 3 day
Wow.
thing or 2 day thing, and they have workshops where they'll teach you like how to do like blues ukulele or jazz ukulele, or they'll just like
Hmm.
have everybody jam together. It's a good time. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I definitely need to check that out.
yeah. I need to get back to it. I think I went like 5 years ago. It was like a long time ago. Um, yeah. Anyway, back to your music. Uh, how many songs do you have on the EP?
Let me think. I have Latuda. I have a few newer ones that I've written. So on the EP, I have Latuda, Half Like You, um, a song called 21.
Hmm.
Um, what else do I have?
Message from a Dark Room.
Yes, Message from a. Oh my God, you know my songs better than I do.
Hmm.
Yeah, Message from a Dark Room. I have a newer one that I've written called Welcome to Smallville. That I'm planning on putting on there. I am planning on doing um like Phoebe Bridgers' version of like Phoebe Bridgers' like sad emo
Hmm.
version of one of Andrew's songs, Brighter. I'm
Cool.
planning on doing like an unplugged, not unplugged, but like a like just uke and my voice kind of thing for that. Um, and then I have more, but I can't think of them. Oh my God, my
Is
brain is.
Welcome Home your song, or is that one you shared writing with Andrew?
So Andrew and I have a project that we do together called The Brother Self-Porrent, which
Hmm.
I'm really proud of, actually. I came up with that name. I think it's really clever. But that is a song that we do together. We just recorded that one and we are working on making an album together.
Ooh, no
So
way.
we have like everything planned. So we have a few songs that we've written for that. We also are doing a few like acoustic versions of his songs. So we're just that's going to be on an album. I believe we're calling it Rubies and Coffee Cups, and that's a Brother Sell Porn album. That's one we only do together. Um, so yeah, but yeah. So there's Latuda 21, Message from a Dark Room, Welcome to Smallville, um, Brighter, which is Andrew's song. And then I have a few more that I'm planning on putting on there. Half Like You, which is the one I wrote about Andrew. Um, I have one that I'm thinking of putting on there that I wrote recently about Harrison called Thomas and Huck, which is basically just my song about Harrison, which is I adore you and you're my best friend and stuff like that. So yeah, so it's gonna be a good, it's gonna be really good, and I'm really excited about it, and I'm calling it Headed for Somewhere, and yeah, I'm really stoked about it.
Sick. And you posted the album art. Did you do the art, or did you have someone else do it?
So I did the art. I as a coping skill, actually, in college, I started doing digital art. And so that is art that I did. That's original art that I did for the album cover. Um,
I love it.
for yeah, thank you so
Is it
much.
Beetle? VW Beetle that you got on
Yes,
there?
yeah.
I
Yeah.
like it. Yeah, yeah. It's got
Yeah.
like a nice kind of like a I don't know, just a happy vibe to it.
Yeah, yeah. The plan is because the whole album is about headed towards somewhere better and it's headed to getting better and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Digital art
Thank
is
you.
fun. I've messed with it a little bit myself, but not as like artistically as you have.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
do
that makes
like
sense.
I'm a web developer, so I do like I'm like a shapes and photos kind of guy. I
Yeah,
can't like
yeah.
make
Yeah, I've
stuff.
been a big fan of doing art on my tablet. So that's been a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, I wish I was more artistic. Did you do the art for the book too?
No, that was digital art creation tool with like not stock photos, but like photos that were open for public use. On I think I used Canva for that.
Would you use AI now?
I don't know. I don't know. I haven't really touched much AI. I have kind of stayed away from it.
Because I'm not as artistic in that way, I've delved deep into it and it's wild. Like
Yeah, I've seen some crazy stuff.
yeah, I can't even believe it. I it scares me a little bit, but whatever. It's fun for me because I'm not like able to make things, but I can
Yeah,
definitely train it. I have this obsession with the Cosmoceratops. I don't know if you've heard me
yeah.
talk about this before, but its scientific name of this dinosaur is the
Mm,
Cosmoceratops richardsoni, and this
mm-hmm.
guy Scott Richardson discovered it and named it after himself. But like
Mm-hmm.
that's my name, Richardsoni.
Yeah,
So like I'm like this dinosaur has the same name as me. It's my
yeah.
dinosaur. So I have
That's
it
really
make
sick.
me all of these like I'm gonna start selling stickers for the podcast and stuff of
Yeah,
these like cartoon Cosmoceratops playing guitar and shit like that. And
I love
like
that.
yeah, I love these dinosaurs. They're like I have one right here. This is the
Oh, that's
Jurassic
so
Park
fun.
that was released this year. Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
why wouldn't I not get these? They have my name on them on the
yeah,
box and stuff. It's
absolutely.
cool. Little narcissistic in a way, but nah, it's just,
I
you
don't
got
know
to
about
support.
narcissistic.
Yeah, it's not. I have to support the things that have my same name, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um man, it's been like 2 hours, so we got to wrap it up soon, but I have two big questions left that I definitely want to ask about.
Absolutely.
Before I do though, did we skip over anything that you're feeling compelled that you want to share with everyone?
Oh no, we've talked about everything I wanted to touch on.
Yes. Good. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah,
Um, we haven't about two things that I want to hear. I'll start with one. I'm hoping it's easy. The Jamie Fett.
Jamie
Uh,
Fett.
what's the story?
So, Jamie Fett is a name that I chose for my stage name. That is the name that I make music under. That was an homage to my cousin who passed.
Mm,
My cousin was a really huge fan of Boba Fett, and he
nice.
also really loved Jameson, the
Mm,
whiskey. Um, so he had a cosplay account called JMO Fett, where he would take pictures of himself cosplaying as Boba Fett holding bottles of Jameson, which I loved. So I wanted to pay homage to that. So I chose Jamie Fett to pay homage to my cousin and kind of honor him in a way. Another song that I actually forgot to mention before because I couldn't, I was like
it's
drawing a
okay.
blank. I have a song called Turning Out, which I wrote about him and about missing him. And that was a song that I borrowed some of Andrew's lyrics for. One of the lines in the pre-chorus is "Wherever you are tonight, I hope you're feeling well." So I borrowed that from him. But Jamie Fett was really inspired by my cousin, and he played a big role in my life. So that was a little way to honor him.
Very cool. I love that.
Yeah,
I'm so happy I
thank
asked.
you.
Remember to ask that.
Yeah.
Um, I thought that I was a pretty big Star Wars fan until I started like having people that I had talked to about Star Wars tell other
Hmm.
people that are Star Wars fans that
Yeah.
I'm a Star Wars fan, and then I'm like, oh, no, I am not. Like,
Yeah.
I know the characters from the main things, but I
Yeah.
don't have any cosplay or anything like that. Like it
Yeah.
goes
I don't
so deep.
either. I have a tattoo of Luke's green lightsaber when he's a Jedi Master.
Nice. Oh hell yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I am definitely not as huge of a Star Wars fan as my cousin was, but you know,
No, like I'm like a
I
big
do
enough
love Star
fan.
Wars.
Me too. Like I'm a big enough fan to like really respect the dedication to Star Wars in that
Yeah.
degree. I was
Yeah.
Han Solo for Halloween this last year, and I was pretty
Oh, that's so
happy.
sick.
I got like a pretty cool like holster that was like 60
Yeah.
bucks. Like I was
Yeah,
like,
that's so sick.
now I can be Han Solo if I want to go to a Star Wars con. But that's probably
Yeah.
as far as I'll go. Um,
Yeah.
cool. And then the other question is, man, this is kind of a big one, but I'll ask anyway. I don't think I'm going to get the same answer I would have if I asked it earlier because we're already like, it's toward the end. But but when you approach, and we can save this for another time too, right? Like you feel free to just answer it as much as you
Yeah.
can. But this is actually a pretty interesting topic I'd like to unpack with you over time. Is the difference that you take in your approach to writing books versus music versus songs, and how is that? How do you look at
So
that?
I would say the approach I take into writing books, um, I it's hard to explain. I imagine these characters and I imagine these stories I'm trying to tell, and I feel like I get such a strong idea of who the characters are that it's so important to me to tell their story. And it's so important to me, even though I know it sounds like I'm a crazy person because they're not real people, but it's like it's so important to me that I get these characters in my head and it's like, well, I have to tell their story. Their story is what's most important. And, you know, even though it wasn't a completely historically accurate version, I felt like I love Edgar Allan Poe so much that I wanted to tell his story in a way that maybe people had never heard before. And it wasn't completely accurate, but there were a lot of things that could have potentially gone down with him. Um, and there were a lot of things that were historically accurate with what he was, you know, going through. And I don't know if he was an abolitionist, but I created the idea that he was, and I wanted to tell that story. And I think when it comes to writing my music, that's my time to tell my story, and that's my
Mm,
time to share who I am and who I want to be, and that's my time to tell stories about how I feel about the people in my life and how I feel about my own mental health and how I feel about you know grief and loss and my own identity and just different aspects of myself that I don't get to share as much in my writing because I am a creative writer, um, as so on such a deeply personal level. I can't really do that in my books, so it's been very helpful to have my music to be like, well, this is my story and this is who I am.
I love that, and
Thank you.
I've picked up on that, and I admire it. As I said, my songwriting feels much more like your book writing to me. Like
Yeah.
that when I started writing songs, it was like the first time I tried to write some books in a similar way, but not at all. Like I came up with mild outlines since I was
Yeah.
a kid and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But for some reason with songs, it just like I can finish it, right? So I could just be like my brother Bill, he's my twin. I knew him since I began. We look
Yeah.
the same, I've been told. And then I'm like, all right, like let's write a song about some twins, and like one of them was like a gambler, and then people try to come and kill him, and like they see the other twin. And then I'm off
Yeah.
like for like a whole like week, like what would Bill be doing, like what would happen, like that's
Yeah.
exactly the world I go into when I'm writing songs.
Yeah. And that's
I
so
Yeah,
awesome.
but it's just interesting to me because I don't write them from I do have songs that I wrote from my own personal perspective, but that's
Yeah.
not what actually I end up just naturally going to when I'm just like, oh, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna write a song. But
Yeah, that
it's
makes
cool.
sense.
So I get that. That's really interesting, and
Yeah.
I like that. Like it's really cool to see a creative person find ways to express both of those. We're talking about the fictional and the non-fictional aspect. I think the
Yeah.
podcast ends up serving that for me. And I think as a good sort of inspirational closing for this whole
Hmm.
conversation would
Yeah.
be my takeaway is that we should pursue both of those types of creative outlets because there's
Yeah.
value and therapy in both. You want to make up things and you want to just exercise your own creativity because it brings out your inner child. It just makes you feel good to make something up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it also
Yeah.
feels good to talk through things from your life and share a piece of yourself. So if you're not
Yeah.
doing that,
100%.
yeah. And as a creator, if you're only writing songs that are about yourself, try to do something fictional. It might break you out of that box and it might make you feel good about yourself. And if you're only doing
Yeah.
it vice versa, if you're only making things up, let yourself out a little bit. Um,
Absolutely.
anyway, I think the only thing we have to do is talk about where people can find you and what they can find.
Yeah, so they will once my EP comes out, it's going to be available on Bandcamp, Spotify, it's going to be available and all of that. But right now, I post a lot of my music where I'm going to be doing shows, stuff like that, on Instagram at the Jamie Fett. That's where I can be found right now.
Sweet. And I will try to put that in the show notes. I know I say that on a lot of episodes, and then I'm like, oh man, I might have forgotten to put that in.
Yeah, no
They'll be in there
problem.
eventually. The Instagrams usually are in there. At least you'll be able to find the account.
Yeah.
And you have some shows coming up with Andrew, right? I
Yes.
think.
Yeah.
I don't know if
So,
the episode will be out by then, but let's just mention it just in case they are.
yeah, absolutely. So, we are going to be doing a show together for the first time on April 6th in Hoboken at the Symposio bookstore. We are doing a show. I'm doing a solo set, and then he's doing a solo set. But in between, we're doing a set together as the Brothers Salporant for the first time. So we are going to be doing that together, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Amazing. Yeah, and people, you should go out and see them. Ray, thanks for doing this episode. It was a real
Yeah,
treat.
thank you for having me.
I'm so happy that we did this. And yeah, thanks for listening. Listeners, if you've made it thus far, I love you. I'm so grateful for you listening. And we'll see you next time.